Welcome to FI for Kids, a podcast about guiding your kids on the path to financial independence and extraordinary lives. I'm your host, Dominic DeLaquil. Our guests today are Jonathan and Renee Harris. They own a six-figure online business that started as a simple farmer's market booth that they then grew into a full-time e-commerce business. Along the way, they also raised 9 kids, teaching them to combine their business skills with their interests to develop marketable talents that earn them sustainable incomes. They call their unique strategy Parent Their Passion, which we're going to talk about in depth today. So welcome, Jonathan and Renee, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Hi, Dominic. Thank you for having us.
So let's start with where I usually start, which is just tell us a little bit about what you learned about money from your parents when you were growing up.
Well, first, my dad is very much of a financial planner type of a person. So growing up, I remember having it instilled in us from an early age that one, credit cards are bad, and two, that the only type of debt you should ever have is school debt or house debt or house debt. And so that was, I remember, I think I did get a credit card in college because I wanted the free t-shirt that came along with it. And that was my first learning experience of credit cards. But always having that in the back of my head from my dad. He was very much of a planner. He came from a more wealthy background. My mom, not so much. So I feel like that's pretty much my background growing up.
So he talked about that some, I guess, but that was really kind of it. Didn't talk about a lot of other details or nothing about investing or those kind of things. Just be careful with your money and don't have debt.
Yeah. More of an anti-debt, or, we had to earn our own money for things. They didn't just buy us anything we wanted. So I do know that part maintained in my head and passed on to our kids, as far as if you want something, you'll have to figure out how to raise your own money or save your allowance. And I do remember there was a lot about saving some of the money that we would receive. But as far as beyond that, looking into the future, investments, not so much.
You got some basic stuff, though, about spending and some basic habits. So that's good. I mean, that's certainly better than nothing, right? Which is what a lot of people sometimes get. So that's good. How about you, Jonathan? What did you learn or pick up on as a kid?
Well, we have a similar background as far as my parents, too, were also, and still are, they're very anti-debt people. So about the only thing they would allow for would be for a house or mortgage. And that was their pattern. I mean, they didn't talk about it all the time, but I know I was very aware of it. Mm-hmm. And that was, they never talked about investments. That also was not part of our family culture. So I think it was more about being careful not to get into debt. And as far as they were okay with us working as teens to get some money, but there wasn't much talk about that too. So I think as far as money is concerned, it was not necessarily something talked about. It was more just left to the culture in general. So I wouldn't say they were fearful of money or anything like that. So it was just something you didn't really talk much about.
Yeah. It's so common, I think. And not necessarily great for all of us as a society and a culture not to be talking about money. So you guys have 9 kids, and the age ranges are 9 to 27. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've got a wealth of experience. Well, actually, there was a pun intended there. But you've taken a pretty unique approach. So usually I'll ask, or what have you been teaching your kids about money? But that's so wrapped into and integrated with our overall conversation today that I'm just going to dive right into your Parent Their Passion approach that you've taken with your kids. So, but let's start with how you sort of found your way into that idea.
Yeah, this started continuing the conversation with money. And I think especially we both product of the 1980s. And I think our peers and our families, we handed off everything to college. So anything big and important, career, what you want to do with your life, your skills, your talents, how you're going to invest it, that was something I think culturally was not part of a family discussion. It's something you go discover once you go to college and something magical happens and you come out and you've figured out whether you're going to become an astronaut or whatever it is your calling is going to be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that one of the triggers for us in our family to start, hey, let's think about this a little deeper, was I had a corporate job with not what I was unhappy with, but it was very much a job that I did not expect that I would be in after all these years, like so many other people of my peers. It has nothing to do with my college education. And we got to thinking we'd like something different for our kids, something a little more intentional. And so we realized we needed to start sooner if we're going to change that repeat pattern again. And so I think that for my oldest at that time was 12 years old, and I was in my mid 40s. And it was a bit of that frustration because after all that education and experience, I was still in a field that wasn't really something I had planned on being in. So I was doing a good job, but I wasn't passionate about.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, how much of a difference would have made had I made some kind of plan early on, and sort of discovered a combination of skills and passion together, right? So you can't just have passion and no skills and vice versa. So why can't we marry the two, figure it out much sooner? And at that time when I was going to go through a layoff, there was a decision, it's like, do we continue down this career for us as a family, which would require us moving out of a community that we loved and going to places that we were not excited about. So, which we did not. That's what triggered us to go into starting our own business. But in that process, I was hyper focused on my kids changing their destiny. It's like, we're going to change this because also my peers are everybody else, is going through the same thing.
Yeah, it's very common, right?
Yeah. So I said, why can't I start doing what all these great self-help books are saying for grown men, right? Why don't we apply it now to the teens? And so I started experimenting very deliberately, trying some of those methods, modifying it, of course, for a teen.
Yeah.
And that's what got us started down that road.
And part of that was because we homeschool, we had the freedom to play around and experiment with that. And we had a very tiny business, a micro business. It wasn't making a lot of money, but it was paying the extra that as this layoff was starting to loom and some of the other expenses, we had more expenses because his company wasn't paying for them, like cell phones and printers and stuff like that. So we needed a little bit more income that we had from the small farmers market business that was helping to pay for that, but certainly was not something that we could feed our family with at that point. So then when the layoff happened, it was pretty much all hands on deck. What are we going to do? And that's when we decided, well, we could use some of our savings. We could cash out on some of our stuff to go all out with this business and make it something that we can turn into an income for us, which meant that the kids had to sacrifice and they had to. And that's when we started to see, wait, kids are, at age 12, there's a lot they can do that can help inside the business. And rather than, if you're on a farm and you tell the kids to go milk the cow, and if they're not into that, it was more that we started to, and Jonathan pointed out that we could find the skill sets and the talents and the interests that the kids have and move those into position to help us out as a business.
Okay, so sure, that's interesting, right? Because I think most people are familiar with the idea of a farm family, and all the kids, like I have actually got a bunch of cousins. Like I got an aunt and uncle that had a dairy farm for a long time, and had several kids, a large family, and all the kids worked on the farm as they were growing up, right? Pretty common. I think everybody knows that concept. But what you're saying is you're building an online business and there's a variety of different skill sets that are required for that. Marketing things and technology things and logistical things. And so what you realize is the kids, even at young ages, maybe had certain interests or talents. So rather than having them do whatever it was, you encourage them to help the business in a way that fit their interest already. Is that right?
Yeah, and this is, if a typical family sees that they're already spending time and money on soccer, dance practice, all of those extracurricular activities for the kids, because teamwork is important and all this other stuff. Instead, in our case, we had a son who was interested in photography. I needed someone to take product shots for the website. And if you're to hire a photographer, you're paying hundreds of dollars. If you have a 12-year-old who's interested but isn't quite there yet, but he loves to do it and get better at it, then you're allowing him to use that time to figure it out and get better at it to the point where now he can take over a little bit of that. And it wasn't like a full-time, a lot of time spent, but over time, then another one of our sons who is into coding, and he could help me with some of the website stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's little, if it's a farm, you're going to have the kid that really loves the tractor part, fixing. Yeah. He's very mechanical. He's hands-on. Well, on a working farm, if that family could allow that 12-year-old to learn how to fix equipment, that's going to be a big asset to the family business. And then you might have someone else, a child who's really good with photography, who could do a little bit on the more advertising side. You can have one who's really into writing, and there's a lot of writing emails and so on. And then you've got your extroverted kid who's going to be out there and doing the funny videos that you use for social media. So you're honing in on the different talents of the kids and allowing them room to get better at it. And they find that valuable because they're getting good at something, especially at age 12 to 14. If a kid knows he's really good, better than all the other kids in the family at something, that just boosts him and he's going to want to get better at it.
Yeah, in that example she had of that, or at that time, our 12-year-old son, who's now 27, and he runs a media company. He's got employees. At that time, he was enjoying a digital camera. This is, several years ago now, more than a decade ago now. Things have gotten very powerful, but back then, not so much.
Yeah.
And it's not like we said, oh, we want him to become a photographer. Here's his calling. That's not how we worked it. He had an interest, and he was doing a lot of goofy videos like a lot of teens do. Yeah. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but let's see if we can get some value. You produce some value for us or someone else. So we knew, like Renee said, we needed some product shots. We could have gone to someone else to have it done, and we've had that done. But in this case, we gave him a chance. It wasn't a high risk. We weren't asking him to run our company or anything like this in the background. He actually went to the local camera shop, and we said, go over there, see if you can get some information on how to do product shots properly. And it has to do with lighting and the white background and shadows. Yeah. So he went there, and he, on his own, because he was passionate enough about the skill, he asked the camera owners, like, oh, I can give you some pointers. I know how this works. So he told him a couple of cheap lights that you could use, how to work the camera angle, gave him a pointer. It took about an hour of his time, and we gave him the money to be able to buy the lighting, I think it was. And so when he came back, of course, now he's already pumped up with another set of skills. He talked with someone else who's really into photography, right? We were not into photography.
We didn't have to be the expert to pass on to him, which is the beauty of it, too, is we are not the experts in all their
No, right. You just encouraged him to go talk to somebody else who was an expert. Yeah. And you can see it, Jonathan. Like what I think where you were going is like, yeah, he's all lit up afterwards because he's passionate about it, and he just spent an hour talking to somebody else who's passionate about it. It's like that kind of thing gets anybody fired up. So that's cool. Mm-hmm. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, then it's like, so the idea is you're finding something, and this is the advantage of being a parent to those particular children, is you actually know their strengths and their tendencies. And sometimes they say it's this, but it's actually that. And so you can interpret that as a parent and help them find their way. So in that example, our son, and that's what he continued on to his bent. He's very confident managing projects. And it came out when I said he went to the camera shop, a lot of 12-year-olds or whatever would not be comfortable necessarily engaging someone else in the technical thing. But he was. Mm-hmm. Not every child is like that, but so we sent him. It could have failed, but it was no big deal if it didn't work out. And he came back successful, and he actually did do a good job. And then from there, I think he went on to selling some of their Legos online. It had nothing to do with our business, but now, eBay was taking off, and now he could sell some of the excess expensive Legos that they had, accumulated over the years. Now he knew how to do, background white shots. So now he was helping his friends and his brothers. So he's climbing the ranks of social status in his own little small world, because now he has some techniques. Thanks to mom and dad, he helped us out, right? So now he's got a little bit, because we paid him for it too, a little small amount. And so every step of the way, our son is discovering what he really likes doing. And we are, as a family, where he's getting all the love from his siblings and his parents for helping them out. So his identity is starting to grow in his skill set. And so that's what we did with each of our kids. There was something that they were, somewhat have a natural bent, but still needed some skills added to it. So it's not a naked passion. Oh, I like mountain climbing, but I'm not going to train or do anything. No, it's a gradual introduction to whatever it is you like doing, and then pivoting. So he was doing, in the beginning, he's just taking some funny videos. Well, that's not going to make you a famous movie maker. So we were looking, well, is there something right now he can help other people with that skill? And when he's that young, it's usually your family in some way or another.
Yeah, yeah.
As the teens get older, they can venture much further out than our family.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to make sure we delve into that just a little bit, because you mentioned that a couple times now, which is this idea of, right, you're encouraging them. You're seeing what their interest might be, because so kids, they can be interested in all sorts of things, and that changes as they grow. And sometimes it's just, it's fluff that doesn't sort of have any sort of meaning behind it, and it's probably not going to last. And some things like with your oldest and this interest in photography, right? You thought, well, maybe there's something there. Let's encourage that, right? Let's nudge him in that direction, guide him a little bit, and see what comes of it. So that's cool. But tied in with all that from the beginning is this idea of, well, great, take this thing you're interested in, let's develop it, but do it in a way that's useful for others, right? Because you mentioned him helping his friends then sell stuff on eBay. So he's helping you, he's useful to the family, but then as he sort of got a little bit of a taste of it and gained some skills, then he was able to help his friends. And I'm sure you have examples, and we'll talk about those, of how your kids have done other things even beyond that. So I just talk about that whole concept for a minute, because I think that's actually a really cool approach to things, and I think probably has all sorts of additional benefits. So talk about that, your focus on that, being useful for others.
Well, that's one of the main parts, is that you have to find something that's going to bring value to somebody else. And then with him, and all of our kids actually, as they get more and more interested in what they're doing, they want the next big thing that's going to help them out to make it even better. And usually money is involved with that. And so rather than us just like, yeah, okay, here's money, go get a better camera or go get whatever, they have to figure out, how can I make my own money? So bringing value is when someone's willing to pay for it as well. So there's a bit of a process with that. But for him, he did have a friend of ours who let him use his drone, and there is a jump there, but he loved it. And so that was the next step.
Before the big drone days.
Yeah, this is early on.
So you Velcroed a camera to it, and it's all shaky.
Yeah, right.
So he has this drone, and then he discovered, well, we had relatives that had rented a house, and so he decided, well, I could do some drone video footage of the house and go approach the real estate. So then the way to make money, and there, that's not overnight. Obviously, he has to get very good at that, and he was already getting really good at video editing, so he can put the pieces together, add music, and navigate all of that. So a few months later, he was getting very good with a drone. So then he was able to actually present something to a real estate office and and this is because we had a connection with them, he was able to offer to do some video footage that the real estate office could use in their advertising. And so in the beginning, he wouldn't get paid, but then over time, he would start to get paid with that. So now and this was, how old was he? Not even 16? Barely 16. 15. So for a kid to actually make money and feel like this is a real job is huge. So when that started to happen, there was we love to tell this story. He knew he had to reach out to more real estate agents. And so now it's, his appearance is going to become important, how he comes across to people, how do you convince another company that, as a 16-year-old, and I don't think they always revealed their age, but that he can do this project, and what are the rules? And he had to definitely navigate all of the laws with the FAA. But Jonathan had a friend who sold insurance on the phone for a living, and that's a lot of cold calling. So he exchanged mowing this guy's lawn for an hour and a half of his time getting trained on cold calling, or just showing up and explaining. So then, which is another huge confidence boost once you can get past, sorry. Didn't mean to bump that there.
But this particular friend, which was interesting, we're not cold callers. He told my son that one of the biggest things he wanted to instill him is never charge by the hour, only by the project. And our son really latched on to that, which is one of the key things as to why his businesses took off, is that he took all the risk. He says when a client is going to ask you to do this, they don't want to worry about how long or micromanaging you, because they don't understand the technical side. Yeah. He says if you do it by the hour, in your case, it's going to backfire on you, because if you get better, you're not going to get the benefits. And a lot of times people don't understand. They want you to carry the risks. he really instilled in him, and we were too in general, is that in the beginning you might make $10 for 10 hours work. But every time because it's your own business, your own skill set that you're investing in, you are motivated to try to, bring it down to a shorter time period or charge more to find the next person. And so those little micro things, always constantly looking for how to bring value. And then your kid is getting hooked. He's getting hooked on the next thing and his next interest. And in the process, he had not particularly expressed any desire to stand in front of a group of grown men and women at a real estate office. But he quickly discovered that real estate agencies have their half hour or hour in the morning where they do sort of a daily call and meetup, and they're always looking for something interesting, to present, to teach the group. Mm-hmm. So unbeknownst to him, asking one of the realtors, like, hey, maybe you could come by the office and do a presentation. And I think he had filmed it actually. And he got hooked on that. He loves talking in front of people. He's super comfortable. Yeah. So that's an example of how this pivoting stuff works, is that he could have decided, I'm going to give up on video photography. I love talking in front of people. I love this face-to-face cold calling, and it takes a certain, personality and training to do that. And he just took to it like a duck to water. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the beauties of this. When you start young and you start pushing the boundaries, you bump into things. You as parents and child, you can get surprised. He's like, wow, he really likes this presentation in front of adults as a 15-year-old, and he's getting massive positive feedback, and he wants to do it more. Yeah, like it's mind-boggling. And some of the other kids are not that way. They could do it, but then they're crying, and you say, okay, we're going to have to take lessons. It's painful for everybody. Sure. And so this process of iteration, discovering, and frequent conversations, right? We have frequent conversations where they're asking us, well, how do you do this? And a lot of times, like, our answer is, we don't know. And that was when he was 12, we'll go ask the camera guy, right? So we have this positive attitude. It may not work. I think you heard me say that. It may not work. Yeah. Prep them for that. It might not work the first time.
But you can coach them through the failures, too, which is the beauty of it.
Well, because that's still super valuable, right? Because that's part of life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's something that they started out that they really were interested in, but they're getting bumps along the way, go through those bumps with them, and then decide whether it's worth it to keep going or to pivot with something else. So
today's episode is sponsored by Money Mavericks. Have you ever thought, I wish my kid could learn about money without all the stress and confusion that I went through? Then you're going to love this. Money Mavericks is a video game, but not like the others. It's a fast-paced, choose-your-own-path financial adventure that teaches kids how to make smart money decisions before they have to face them in real life. It's built on over a decade of insights from 100-plus millionaire interviews and tested by certified financial accountability coaches using 66 of the most common real-life money situations. And here's where it's different. It doesn't just teach dollars and cents. It helps kids develop the mindset, habits, and behaviors behind true wealth. Financially, yes, but also in their relationships, career, and health. Give your kids a head start towards freedom, confidence, and a life they're proud to build. Head to www.accountable.network to learn more and grab Money Mavericks today. It's totally free, because your kid's future is worth more than just a high score. Thanks to Money Mavericks for sponsoring this episode.
Yeah, and then the other part they really learned, thinking of our oldest, is by the time he's 18, now he's making money, he can live on his own. So all of our kids have been able to move out by the time they're 18 and have an income that's supporting them. He had to decide, well, do I want to be my own boss or work for someone else? So that was just, it's nice to know that you can have that opportunity at the age of 18 to decide. And so he did work for somebody else as an employee, and he had navigated all that. And now he's back to being self-employed. And but it's having more of those experiences early on helps them to that by the time they are going to be on their own. And when they're 16 and asking for help in a forum or from some other expert, those experts are a lot more willing to give up their time to spend with a 16-year-old who's already shown he has invested so much time in it than they would if you and I were to decide, let's just switch and I want to go learn something new. they're not going to give an adult the time of day as they would a young person who's already kind of proven himself.
Yeah, well, that makes complete sense, right? Because most people that have been doing something for a while and that are good at it, and especially if they're good at it and they're passionate about it, like the photography guy, they're happy to talk to somebody that's younger and share that knowledge, right? I mean, we all like to do that. So that's a great point, Renee. That's actually really cool. And it's just cool. So kind of back to where you started in a way, Jonathan. So on some level, right, and I guess this was part of what you guys figured out and was your intent when you were kind of struggling with the layoff issues and stuff and the job and kind of what a lot of your people your same age were going through at the time is you were talking about college. You go away to college and you're supposed to just, you discover all these things about yourself and magically move on. And you do discover a lot of things about yourself if you go to college in that 4-year period, but there's a lot still left out there to figure out. And it's cool that just in the examples that you've given so far, and we've only talked about your oldest to this point, you can see how, this process of discovery, self-discovery has started much earlier. And then that makes sense that fits in with the pivot idea because it's all part of that same, like you were saying, he probably never would have thought, I want to go stand up and give presentations in front of people. But because he kind of step by step ended up there because he was really sort of trying to do this other thing, then found out, I have a skill set for this and I kind of like it. Like that's really, that's super cool. So
it
what
really
about,
is. And
go ahead.
Yeah, it is. And I think that there is a bit of that runway, right? So from 12, and these are not hard numbers, but all the point is you got from, let's say 12 to 18 approximately. And during that time frame, they have shelter. They're not going to starve. They're, mom and dad's going to, nothing bad is really going to happen to them.
Right.
So you have time to explore. I think people get that idea, but that time to explore is usually wasted on stuff that most of the time, once they leave high school, they never touch again. Yeah. It's so common, right?
Yep.
So what you're looking for, it's not, I think one of the fears that parents have maybe is that they want their kids to, quote, have this wonderful childhood. So in their minds, wonderful childhood translates to you're going to be doing what everybody else is doing because everybody's having a happy time. And then when you find out later after high school, you know what, I really, I played basketball, I enjoyed it, but I never intended becoming a professional. And then you ask them, well, why don't you play basketball now? You can. You can go do a pickup game, and you're like, well, I'd rather just be home, drinking a beer with my wife, watching a movie, Yeah. So you're thinking, so it really wasn't that passionate, and you realize, and there is a truth to it. The reason why you like it is because you're hanging out with friends. But I think the missing part that a lot of parents don't see is that if you get them connected to something that really lights them up, and not just lights them up, they have the skills to really put themselves out there. That kind of bonding happens not in just some random sport that your school happens to be doing. It happens in something that's really about them, about their personality, their skills, and the strengths. So they start bonding with other people in that field. So you get that same effect, sure, but it's an investment in their future.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of understand that, but it's way more powerful than people think of at first. So once you go down that road, some people kind of fall into it because they really are, let's say, into long distance running. Sure. And so they happen to be part of a track team and they get to travel. So maybe you're in that situation. It's kind of a lucky break. And then later on in life, all they do is they love to run. Their work is just to fuel their running. Okay, great. But most of the people don't fall into that category. Right. So they're on the track team, but they're never going to go on running. And it's not because they're lazy. It's because they really weren't into it in the first place. But they could been into something and made those friendships along the way that would have given that same camaraderie that I think the parents are looking for. They want their child to have that happy childhood, that bonding and connecting.
Yeah, well, that's cool. And the kids want that camaraderie too, right? That's, that right, drives a lot of sort of what they're seeking, whether they realize all the things behind it or not. So, plus then it starts to build up these practical skills, right? Like on the financial side of things and moving towards financial independence. And then there's this whole, there's always the connection between understanding money and managing your finances and trying to sort of set yourself up for financial stability and then financial independence. And that's always tied in with what really matters to you in life. And that's a little bit different for all of us. And that's very much a process of self-knowledge and self-discovery. And what you've done is you've basically, from an early age, combined those two things together, and tied it in with the idea of being useful. And there's nothing wrong with being useful and earning an income from it. I mean, that's perfectly appropriate. That's really cool. So one of the things that is always a question in my mind is, did you encounter with any of your kids any reluctance to doing these kind of things along the way, where they just, because kids all have different personalities. So did anybody just kind of sort of dig in and didn't want to do it?
Not really. This is the crazy thing.
Because it's what they love.
The thing is that it wasn't like, hey, your destiny is to become a concert pianist, so now we're going to park you in front of a piano and we're gonna churn. We've had some friends do that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That usually doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does, but that's not how we approached it. It's like, hey, you're spending a lot of time, fixing your car in the garage. Yeah. Okay. I wasn't that kind of guy, but I had some friends like that. That was their way to rest.
Yep. Yeah.
They just enjoyed that peace and quiet, and they like to tinker. Mm-hmm. Well, what I recommend is, hey, you're spending a lot of time doing this. How about you've been talking about wanting to go, with your buddies to Santa Cruz, popular destination here, and it costs some money. So rather than, hitting us up for money, maybe you could find a way to use those great skills that you have right now, making a little money on the side. And it's like, usually they'll say something like, you mean like doing what I'm doing right now, but make some money? How do I go about doing that? Well, they can't become a full-time mechanic. They're not going to go to trade school. They're, 14, 15. But there's probably something in their circle of friends or whatever that they would like done on their car. So then the next conversation is, well, how could you do $40? Right? A mechanic's going to make way more than that on a Saturday morning. But for $40, you could probably, detail a car or check the the levels, or maybe do some simple stuff.
Change the
oil. And then the next
conversation.
Change the oil, right? Yeah. So it depends. You don't know. You're going to look what the market is. Yeah. And then a lot of times like, well, I could do this simple thing that they would let me to do, but I need this tool. Well, then you can get those tools relatively simple because you're not trying to do some kind of full mechanic shop, a whole trade. All you're going to do is a simple, relatively speaking, task that he's kind of interested in. Now he gets to be the hero, and you're going to kind of pave the way. Depends how old he is. And, maybe it'll take him 5 hours that morning to do something, and he gets $20. You're thinking, well, 5 hours for $20, you can't make a living out of that. Well, that's not the point. He's made his first $20 doing a genuine service for someone else. They're grateful. And now that confidence goes up. And so then usually the next question is like, well, next weekend, they'll say, wow, that was a lot of hours. And like, yeah, good work. This is amazing. You did this. And then the next conversation is, well, next weekend, how can you double that money? And then they'll say, wow, if I had this tool and I could line up 5 people, then I could make $120 or $200. And sometimes the parent, like, sometimes they get overexcited and you're like, ooh, that's very ambitious.
Yeah.
And unless it's going to destroy them or, ruin irreparably some friendship or relationship with someone that let them do it.
Yeah.
And if they kind of bump up against the wall, then they realize, I needed to either practice a little bit more or be a little more clear. There's also expectations setting. We've had that. Our coder son has run into issues. He's learned to be very good at setting expectations with customers. Sure. Because a lot of times they'd come back and ask for the scope creep, as they called it in his field. And he's learned to manage that very well.
Yeah.
And so those are those experiences you want them to encounter. And as far as them pushing back, what you're really truly doing is helping them discover themselves. So you're not pushing against them. You're actually pushing their fears away. Maybe that's a good, we'll have to remember that. Pushing their fears and their anxieties aside by kind of coaching them. This is how you can deal with it.
I can think of 2 potential areas of resistance if we had that. One would be they've got an extroverted dad who would say, hey, you should go out there and contact this person. You have an opportunity right here. And they're like, ah. And then the second is if we had a child who wasn't really sure what he wanted to do. But so with the first one, that's where the parenting comes in. And we kind of both, I feel for them because I was that kid as a shy 12-year-old, like, oh, please don't make me call somebody on the phone. And then here's dad like pushing him into the deep end and like, come on. So I think between the 2 parents, you kind of navigate that with each kid. But when there's an opportunity, it's always once they can get that confidence, they have the opportunity and they succeed at it, they're a lot more willing. In their minds, they're thinking, oh my goodness, this person's going to ask me something I don't know and I'm going to look like a fool. That's usually what's going on in a 12-year-old kid's head. And so they don't want to try it because nobody wants to look foolish or dumb. Yeah. And so part of that is like, okay, let's think of all the scenarios or however you work with the kid on that, but just get them to do it. And it's almost always, it ends up being way better than they thought.
Yeah.
So they're thinking the worst case. That's just their confidence.
Sure.
They go through it and then they're happy. It just makes that next step so much easier. So I think that would be, if we think of resistance, it would be that like, I got to go out there and face people. And then the second one is if one of the kids is like, well, I see all my siblings being so good at all these different things. What's me? If I think that would probably be the hardest if we had someone that was like, felt they had no good skills or no, they were horrible. And, there's always something. And we have, even on our website, we have a lot of help on, like, we have a worksheet that we went to ChatGPT and I came up with, like, ChatGPT did 200 different kinds of interests and activities and so on that a kid could just get started on. But when they see it on a list, then they're checking off all the boxes of what they like to do. But if they see this list, it'd be amazing.
No, I think that's actually a really great idea, because it's hard for kids, and you're like, well, what might you be interested in? And maybe you can think of a few things off the top of your head, a half a dozen things, right? And they're like, and it's like, and then they're kind of done because they don't know even sort of where to begin. So that's actually a great idea that you just took advantage of that technology to get a list of hundreds of things, and then maybe then your odds of them finding things on there that, maybe I want to explore this a little bit. That's cool. That's a great idea.
And I think the parent we talked to a couple different parents where they felt like they couldn't encourage their kid with a particular area that they thought the kid was good in because they didn't want to influence that. And I'm thinking, if my mom or my dad at age 12 came to me and said, you have a real knack for writing, you might want to consider, I would be like, oh, okay, maybe I should try to do more of that.
Yeah.
But if it's just left up to me to kind of try to figure it out all by myself, I wouldn't have that confidence. So I think it is totally okay for parents to point things out and suggest, and maybe you do have to get them a little bit, nudge them to try something, because oftentimes they don't know. We assume that they have all of the years of knowledge and experience that we have as parents have. They don't. They're just, a blank slate. They don't know any of those things.
Yeah,
so.
I find myself doing that. It's easy to to think that, to forget that they don't know all these things that we now take for granted, right? And you have to really sometimes put yourself back in their shoes, like, wait, no, I didn't know that. I lacked a lot of confidence back then, and I didn't know all those things. And I know some people tried to tell me things, and I didn't really sort of understand it. And they're in that same place. Like, I got to remember that. But then I think, it's also a good point that you bring up, right? That, because to me, one of the main jobs, and I think you guys have talked about this either directly or indirectly a lot, really, this episode, which is, one of the big jobs you have as a parent is to look for their strengths and weaknesses, right? And then guide them to develop them. Things that maybe they're struggling with, you're like, oh, that's, you've got to work through that because that's not going to serve you well when you get into adulthood. And you try to help them work through those things. And the same thing with their strengths, which is a lot of what we've been talking about, right? With the parent, their passion idea is, you're looking for things that they have an interest in and that they have some skill in, and you're not influencing them, like you were saying, Jonathan, like you're going to be a concert pianist, so you sit down and play that piano because that's the vision you had. You're not picking a vision for them and trying to force them into that box.
Right.
You're almost like a Renaissance sculptor, right? Or any sculptor, right? Where you've got this unformed block and you're seeing the potential that's in there and you're trying to unlock that, right? As a parent, you're just looking at them and observing and seeing what they're interested in and what their skills might be, and then trying to guide them to explore that. And then I think that's where, to me, if I understand you, that's where you get into the pivot thing, is they move along that. If they find, I'm actually more interested in something else, then you help them move in that direction, right? And so it's this process of influencing them, but influencing them based on what you see is already within them, because you're helping them bring that out, not trying to force them into your box.
Right.
Yeah.
That's super important.
Yeah. And that's why you're asking me, do you get resistance? The resistance is not from you telling them. You're essentially telling them, you're beautiful in this area. I see you.
Yeah.
And you're articulating it for them. And what you're doing is you're clearing the way. You're going through the jungle. they want to get to this destination, but there are snakes and whatever, jaguars, and you're just telling them, okay, there are jaguars along, there are snakes, so this is how other people have done it. We're going to clear the way to help you get there. That's what you're doing for them. That's why I hope parents get really excited, is that each of your children is unique. And every parent will say that. I got, 3 children, and each one of them is so different than the other. There's a family trait, but still, you're like stunned. Same environment. And, one loves to code for hours, and another one cannot stand sitting in a room. They have to be outdoors moving. They're very kinetic, right? You have very different you see those tendencies pretty early on.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is say, okay, if someone's coding a lot, you have to get worried about their health. You need to exercise eventually. You need to get outside, right? So you put them in touch with other people who are in that field, let's say, and they're giving them tips like, this is how you survive it. This is how you don't become crippled. And another person is the same thing. This is how you have to keep track of your money. Maybe they're not the type of people that likes to keep track of details, but somebody does. So maybe you hire an accountant, or you put them on TurboTax or Quicken. So there's always something you can do. So you're more like a coach, helping them get to a destination. So it's a general direction, and as you go, you get more and more precise with the destination you want to go. But you don't want them to give up just because there's some other skill or social situation that's kind of in the way. Not because they're trying to stop your teen, it's just reality of life. You're helping them navigate that. So that's what you're doing as a parent. So, and we're having a constant conversation. So if someone said, I don't want to do this. Like one time we had one son, one of the things we do as a family sort of rule, you're going to blog about whatever talent you're developing as part of our writing. That's to develop your English communication skills, right? So we want to see some status report. I encourage even failures, blog about your failures, because people in your field love to see you've got grit, right? So I joke about, if you lose a finger, make sure you film that, because that means people, you're one of them. You've got the battle scars.
We had a bladesmith guy.
We had a bladesmith. Yeah, there were some near misses there, kind of freaky. But I had one son who at some point got really upset. I don't want to blog anymore. I'm sick and tired of this. This is boring. Now, this particular son, he's like executive style material. He loves to talk and manage projects. He would not be afraid to fire people. He's very like super precocious, and it's a different son. And so we had a little bit of a scuffle on that one. He was probably 16 or something, and I realized he loved to do business journals. He's one of these kids. He had like dozens of business journals. It's big into self-help. Well, he loved it. He kept ordering and filling them up, and I said, you know what? Then it sounds like you're too bored. So I understood his frustration. So I thought, well, what's the next level up from blogging? I thought, vlogging, video yourself and put yourself on the internet. He said, okay, I'll do that. And then he came up with his own challenge, which frightened me, but I didn't tell him that till after. He says, I'm going to do 100 videos, and I'm going to put them up on Instagram.
3 a day.
3 a day, morning, lunch, and dinner. And I told Renee, it's like, I could not do that. I could not do that. But he had so much fire in him. His first videos were so cringe. I think I maybe watched the first one. I could not get myself to watch the next ones. I mean, it was so bad. And he was so embarrassed that he decided to watch a few videos. And in one of the videos says, well, you need to stand up so it doesn't look like you're depressed talking, because, into the camera. So he started doing that. And then he started over flailing and so forth and so on. And then he decided this is during the lockdowns, he decided to join the local Toastmasters group, but they were only meeting online. So he did. These were adults, no kids in there. He decided to join. They gave him some tips. He finished his goal. It was just like within a very short amount of time. And it was amazing. That thing transformed him. His confidence just went up through the roof. By the time he was done, he definitely improved himself. But over the years now, this is what he does. He lives in Alabama now, and we were visiting him one time a couple years ago. He closes sales deals all the time. And I'm listening to him on the phone. And I'm like, how does he do that? I don't even understand. I mean, I'm hearing it and I'm seeing it. And you hear people do that. He's in that category.
We visited him 2 years ago, and where we went out to see how he does this and just listen to him on the phone. And he's 21 now, so he was 19 then, and he's able to close these deals. So people don't realize even how young they are because they come across as being older. But it's all starting younger. It's kind of goes back to
Yeah,
that.
you get excited as a parent because you're having these conversations with them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'm just going to geek out here for a second on my end, just because this is something that I've been interested in for so long. And so I don't know if you guys are familiar with Joseph Campbell at all and the hero's journey, but
A little bit. I'm not too familiar, but I've heard some
well,
stuff.
basically what you guys are doing is you're serving as the mentors in that whole hero's journey path, which is, if we go back to where you were talking about college and then you had this job, you're like, I'm not really passionate about it. One of the things that Campbell talks about in the hero's journey is the whole idea is to follow your bliss. You got to find something you're passionate for and channel your energies in that. And then you have to create your own path. You can't follow somebody else's path. You have to create your own path, right? And then you were talking about you were giving your example of like, oh, there are snakes and these different things along the way, and we'll help you work through them. That's the hero's journey, right? In the forest, as he's trying to, or she's trying to find her path to pursue what it is they're passionate about. And so this whole idea of parent their passion, to me, is very much, you're the parents guiding each of your kids on their own separate, unique hero's journey by seeing what potential's there, what their interests are, and then trying to help them, reveal that. So that's really great. That's really cool stuff. So, I want to talk about how people can reach you and stuff in a second. But before we do that, give a few quick examples of what your other kids, just kind of which directions they've taken.
Yeah, sure. So the second one was we had in our area of California where we live, there is a long, very old gem and mineral club back from the gold rush days. And it's been going on for generations. And a lot of older guys are in this club. People donate their equipment. So they're very much into cutting stones, metal work, a lot of dangerous machinery flying around. And my son was very much interested in this very kinetic type of thing. So I started taking him there because he was curious in all of this. And while we were there, he really got into learning how to cut stones, and there's a whole technique to that.
We take them where the adults are, not a kids club.
Yeah,
because
we
we
favor
really
that.
found that these older guys are so invested in a kid that's very interested. So it's almost like the mentor. You have this mentor along the journey. That's what we find in situations where it's the old guys club.
Yeah, so he got into that. Then he discovered he really liked the metal part of the jewelry, and that wasn't his original intention. That got him into knife making. That got him deep into samurai swords and stuff. Then he found he could sell online his own Damascus small knives. He tried selling big ones, but no one wants to buy them because you don't have a big name. But they will buy small knives. And he started selling them on Instagram, making good money off of it. Then from there, he went on, when he left home, he went to go work for a professional, a very high-end knife maker in the U.S. And they hired him because he was so good at what he did.
His Instagram and his blog, those were his portfolios. So he's already proven himself.
Yeah.
And that's why we make the kids get their stuff out there.
Yeah.
And in that place, he fell in love with the machinery, the very expensive machinery to help the production process. Then he decided he loved the machinery so much that he went to go an apprentice for, I think it was 1 year at the most, for a very big shop in California where a lot of very good CNC machinists are. But because he was already so advanced in his knowledge of metal from a deep one with the metal position of life,
Yeah.
he flew through that thing and decided he wanted to start his own shop himself, saved up enough money and they're expensive, bought his own machine and was making money right off the bat. And he's picked up some business skills along the way. So he pivoted. So that's one son now. He's a CNC machinist, has his own shop. And so that's how he started off. He started going down a path, loves metal, all things metal. And he owns his own shop. He
got married and had a baby along the way. So that's so he's able to do this and have a family and not have to pay student loan debt. So.
Right.
The third one down was he's the lead software developer for a financial company.
He was our video game player, so he was into Minecraft. So we were able to take that from Minecraft into becoming a software developer.
Oh yeah.
So
sure.
along the way, he started helping these private little small businesses that own servers for Minecraft players. And families at that point in time, you'd have to have a subscription service as a safe playing environment. But people were trying to break in under false IDs and so forth. So they hired him because he was already showing some coder skills to try to come up with a better cross-check of ID and stuff on the software. And then he got introduced into managing larger pieces of software, and these gigs started growing and growing till eventually, long story, now he's doing a lot of encryption-related stuff and investment-related stuff, and he's doing all the software. He's very, very astute at managing the day-to-day of developing software. So he's told me personally, he says, like, there are a lot of guys who can do coding, but they don't understand the human part of managing everybody's expectations and meeting the deadlines, and he's very good at that. That started when he was 12 and 14, when mom and dad said, you're spending a lot of time playing games. Let's make that useful. And once he got hooked, I knew, because I could see he was very logical. So we understood that.
And he bought his first house last year, so he was able to move out. He's 23, and then he has a twin sister. Opposite. That's where the opposite comes in. She's into graphic artist. She was able to do a lot of art for a couple different publications, and then she also does commissions online. So she's really good at kind of cartoon art and digital art.
Oh, cool.
And then the one that did the 100 videos, he's the only one that moved out of state. He's further away, but he was really helping us out in our business quite a bit, and everything became more efficient. So he was interested dabbling in the video stuff and in the CNC stuff. So he had different pivots along the way. But what he found is his thing is that he's very efficient and he can manage large groups. And if a small business needs a particular type of software, he identifies what they need and teaches and trains them. So now he's partnered up with another.
His favorite book, he told me, was Cheaper by the Dozen, the story of the guy who was an early American efficiency expert. Yeah. And he totally identified that's how he thinks. And that's what he does for a living.
Yeah, and then our 19-year-old is a video editor. So early on, he looked like someone that would be like in drama if he was in the public school system. But we got him, he was interested in voice acting. And so we kind of developed a little bit of that along the way. And he would do little gigs. Then he liked to do video editing, and he did a lot of podcast editing, actually. That was where he was making some money, just podcast editing. Mm-hmm. That turned into video editing. And so now he does some work individually for some big companies that have used their social media. He does the video editing for that. And he lives a couple hours away from us. Wow. And then we have 3 still at home. So we're kind of waiting to see what happens. The funny thing is that the 16-year-old who's still at home, all of his brothers want to hire him because he has a little bit of everything. You know, he has a lot of opportunities, but he's definitely seen what he likes.
Kind of following the money right now.
Yeah.
Which brother's going to pay the most and pay on time, and he's going to go learn the skill set.
Interesting.
And then we have 2 daughters, a 14-year-old who actually helps a lot with the business. We see a lot of entrepreneurial skill sets and talents in her, and then a 9-year-old. So we'll see.
Yeah. That's all very cool. So, and I know that you have systematized this approach and you've got a website. So talk about that. Where can people find you?
So if you go to parenttheirpassion.com, a couple different things we have. If you just want to go get a free download, I highly recommend, especially because I feel like it's a whole mindset switch to get the free download, and that takes a parent and the student through a thought process of identifying that talent, and then the parent can help decide, I see an opportunity here, maybe we can identify and develop that talent. So there's a download that you'll see on the main page. And then if you want more help and assistance than that, we have one just for the teens to take. So we guide them through several different videos and Q&A, and it's all where they're talking about and thinking about themselves. So they answer the questions with themselves in mind. We highly encourage the parents to get involved because the parents can help identify things as well. But we're talking to the teens on that, and that's a short 1 hour maybe at the most.
Yeah,
a few videos. It might take an hour to go through the whole thing, but by the time you're done with that, the kids know or have something to start working with. And then eventually we would definitely recommend the blog to your talent, and then we take that. Thankfully, we started doing videos of the process years ago. So we have 40 videos, and everything that we did with the kids, we documented. So I have some videos where I'm talking to my 12-year-old who is now 26 years old, and how we did that. So we decided to take those and keep the ones that were the most important, most relevant, and then make a series of videos to follow. And it takes kids how to start with a blog, not even using WordPress. It's something much cheaper and simpler, but they start at age 12, and then they start to blog it about what they're doing. And we guide them through little exercises to show them what to blog about.
Oh, cool.
And then there's also a longer one where you and the teen can work together, and it's a sort of an expanded version to really go through the mindset process. A lot of these things are simple in its actual application. Like I was telling you, you go to the camera store, it's simple, it's not expensive per se, it goes, according to your family's budget, but the biggest thing is to overcome the mindset.
Yeah.
So instead of waiting for the textbook to tell you, you're flipping the script. You're saying, this is what I want to do, now I will go look for the textbook or the mentor instead of the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and something we had talked about before, Renee, that I want to make sure and mention is that, so you guys have homeschooled your kids, but that's not something that's necessary in order to take this parent their passion approach and try to discover these things and nurture those in your kids. You don't have to be doing homeschool in order to do that.
Right. It's easier because you have more time. You could stop something and go and take advantage of an opportunity at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Sure.
That other kids may not have. But at the same time, today's parents are already driving their kids all over the place with activities, and whether it's sports or music, if you switch your mindset around, your kids are going to find the things that they enjoy doing. And then instead of having the whole family have to stop and serve that kid who's in the sports, and now all your nights are taken up and your weekends are taken up because you've just invested all this time and money into football, for example. Instead of that, this is going to take some of those more useful skill sets that they might be interested in and then feed that time and sometimes money into those activities instead. But they turn around and start serving the family as a result. So everybody gets a benefit. And we like to call it like the family economy, where different kids with what they're getting good at is going to come back and serve the family and then serve the world after.
Yeah, actually, that's why I highly recommend, if you go to our website and put your email in there, you'll get these automated newsletter tips that I put out, and it actually deals with a lot of those, what I call hijacking. You can hijack. So if you're committed to your football, for whatever reason socially, you can't pull your kid out of football. He doesn't want to be it, but you're still going to do it, right? Maybe you're in the South where you have to do it. So I can give you tips on how to still do it, but you're going to hijack the whole football experience to serve your kid.
Oh,
right?
Sure. In a longer term way, right? Because they're not maybe going to, they're maybe not good enough to play college football and not good enough to go pro, but they have other skills that they may use for the rest of their life. And so how you would combine those, look for those things within the context of football. Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So
cool.
if the one who is really precocious about public speaking was stuck in football. I say stuck because, I shouldn't say it because all people love it. But if you're in that, then I would recommend, hey, you know what you should do is do that speech at the end. When after you're done, you take an opportunity to learn how to thank everybody. Motivational speech. That's what I would do.
Or video.
You're going to do this because everybody wants that. Everybody wants that. Who's going to be the one to say, everybody wants something like that.
Yeah, sure.
So watch out. If he's on your football team, he's going to be taking that microphone and congratulating everybody. You're going to learn those skills. That's what I call hijacking. You're not hijacking and posing. You're actually bringing value. So that's the conversation you have. That's what you're going to also discover in the newsletter tips. So if you're in those situations, you can hijack, but that assumes that you have a goal and a plan.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to say, hey, you've got the speech ability to you. Grab the microphone because everybody after the game is awkward. They want to say thank you, but they don't know how to do it. You do it.
Yeah, cool. Well, so parenttheirpassion.com. Okay. Yeah. I will put that in.
Instagram, Facebook, the same.
Sorry, go ahead.
For social media, it's the same. So Facebook, Instagram, and website, it's all Parent Their Passion.
Okay, yeah. I'll put the website in the show notes so people can go there. And then if they want to find the other things, I'm assuming they can do that from their website. So just to keep it simple. Yep. So thank you so much for coming on. I think it's been a really great conversation. And really cool stuff that you guys have been doing. So cool that you found your way into this and then developed it into more of a systematic thing and that you're sharing it with other people. So I think a ton of useful stuff. So thank you very much.
We love sharing it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the FI for Kids podcast. Please support the show by hitting subscribe and receive new episodes every Thursday. The intro and exit music this episode are courtesy of Douglas Cameron. As always, you can find links to the FI for Kids music in the show notes. Thanks again, and we'll talk next week.
You're like the horizon. I can't reach you, you're so far away. And if I run, day you'd be gone. I'd be left wondering why you moved on, and why you never said goodbye. I can't wait any longer. I see the writing on the wall. It's time for us to say, tomorrow we are yesterday. Tomorrow we are yesterday. You're like the sunset. You're glowing bright, but you're fading. And what I don't get is why I'm left here waiting. But I'm like a phoenix. I will rise up from this fire. It's something we can't fix. I guess it's time for us to retire. I can't wait any longer. I see the writing on the wall. It's time for us to say, tomorrow we are yesterday. Tomorrow we are yesterday.